Just back and forth as much as you want.
Cool.
Boom.
All right. Thank you.
Don't trip over.
Yeah, I will. I think last time I talked to you, I about bit it pretty hard. So I'll try not to do that again.
Where's my? Oh, can you hand me my phone?
Oh, that's yours.
Please?
Yep.
Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Nathan Hiscock. I serve as Director of Growth for Sella Cloud, which is a global managed service and consulting provider. They're based out of Tel Aviv. Long story short, I built a startup a year and a half ago. They acquired a company that I started working with, and I found myself in this role. So that's the story there. I think last time I talked to you, I don't know if all that had happened yet. It had just started. So, but I also teach cloud, primarily AWS at Ball State, to grad students, cloud fundamentals. And one of those lectures is on FinOps. So I actually kind of brought some of that material in here, as well as some content that I cover a lot of times with other folks. So my goal today is just to have a talk and a discussion about FinOps. Jason is probably pretty familiar with, how that goes. You can ignore me. I'm just saying he probably knows a little bit about these conversations. And if I talk tonight, that's primarily from an AWS perspective. That's probably how it is because that's who I primarily work with. We are multi-cloud, and I used to actually have an Azure Microsoft SharePoint practice years ago. So that's actually, I was born and raised in .NET, C# when it first came out, et cetera. So, did I send? Okay, well, all right, here we go.
Did you send me the right one?
I'm not sure if I did, so we'll just go with the slides I have. So, isn't that fun? So really FinOps, a lot of this comes from the FinOps books that I'll show later. And then I get a lot of philosophy from Werner Vogel, who's the AWS CTO, in terms of how he approaches architecting solutions and keeping them cost optimized. So a lot of that comes from that AWS background. FinOps, though, here's kind of what I describe. It's that cultural practice where we maximize the business value. Now I'm talking about cloud here more specifically, but really it can apply to any sort of operational framework with your development, with your IT platforms, whether it's an on-prem environment, whether it's colo, whether it's, jointly hosted somewhere, whether it's one of the hyperscale clouds like Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle, et cetera, IBM. So what's FinOps? You're blending finance with DevOps. Everybody familiar with DevOps, I presume here to some degree, right? How you deploy, build, code, orchestrate it, make it agile, keep it flexible so you can constantly change and update it without destroying the baby, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, keep it moving. But how do we make financial decisions throughout that? Or you'll hear in AWS parlance, cloud financial management, CFM. I never say that. I say FinOps. So it's an operational framework. It's not a technology. It's a way of thinking. It's an approach to how we build computing platforms today that might be a little different than what we were able to do even 5, 10, 20 years ago. Probably it's come a long way, Jason, even since, a decade ago, with Terraform and IAC just everywhere. It makes it things a much easier. So this slide was actually supposed to be number 2. So I think we're okay, Ari. I think I have the right slides. So I kind of go frame this evolution of computing, and we started with mainframes, and probably there aren't anybody in here who really worked heavily on mainframes. Maybe there are, but you remember mainframes, you had the cards and you had to go punch things in and you had to go like log in time to be able to actually put your program on the computer. I mean, that's a really expensive operation, right? Because it's very difficult, time consuming, labor intensive. And then we got better, right? We did multi-threading. So now you could have more than one operator on a computer at one time. And then we did client server, right? Where now we have a client machine and server machine. Now I can deploy things and it's faster and it's less expensive. It's more accessible. And then we got into distributed web-based systems, late 90s, early 2000s, web servers deployed around the globe. We could deploy apps out there. That's probably when .NET came on the scene, right? Later in that life cycle. And then we get into cloud today, right? Now I can drop infrastructure anywhere there's one of those cloud providers' data centers in the world. And what that all means is we've decentralized the purchasing decisions and increased the agility of our IT operations and made more granular cost metrics over time. So whereas in 100, 70 years ago, if you had a mainframe, you might be the government and the only entity that had enough money to actually buy one of these devices. Client server, right? You had to have some sort of data center. Web-based, you still had to have some sort of rack with, data centers. Now with cloud managed services, literally you've got a credit card. You can go online, sign up for an account, and have an application or an entire AI ML stack running in a matter of minutes. And if you go take somebody else's blueprint and drop it on there, it's incredibly fast. Yeah. So yeah, and please, if you got comments, chime in. So, kind of what I try to say is we've greatly democratized IT. And so now you, as the solution developer, the person putting hands to keyboard, you're now making purchasing decisions on what IT infrastructure you're going to use for your solution. Whereas 70 years ago, could a software developer go purchase a mainframe? Probably not. They probably had to go through a CIO, right? Well, now
Do anything they want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had situations where a developer set up this account on their credit card, and then lo and behold, that account became production. And then lo and behold, their credit card account got compromised. They shut their credit card off as they should and forgot it was tied to that account, and then that account gets shut off. So all sorts of fun things. So I don't think we're going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but a couple high-level concepts. When you're doing on-prem, I remember early in my career 20 years ago, if we had to put in a new computer system, they would go, okay, spec out the hardware you need. We're going to go buy it. They're going to ship the devices to us, and we're going to slap it into the rack, and we're going to rock and roll with it, right? So that was a big CapEx. And so any accounting people-ish background, right? A CapEx, you invest a bunch of capital, like you buy a building, and then you depreciate it over time. So you have capital and you expend it. That's one accounting method. And then, of course, on-prem, there were often communication silos, and you had legacy app development where you would, build this code, deploy it here, and, it'd sit there and only there unless you moved it to another place.
Put the next key in the push you got.
Yep. Yeah. It's all under your desk, right?
Yeah.
Running on a CD.
In a different country.
Yep.
In a different data center.
Yep. So
additional resource.
Mm-hmm. So with cloud now, we account for it with operational expense, right? Because you don't go buy a AWS data center for $2 billion, right? Yeah, you don't even buy it, right? You literally go out and say, I'm going to use this service, this service, this service, and as I use it, I'm paying for the usage, the time, the storage. It's like leasing it's like leasing your car instead of paying for it outright.
You get to pay for the exact scale that you need.
Yep.
Like before, you could overbuy or you could under purchase the server infrastructure.
Yep.
Now you've paid for it though. So now you gotta make the best of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't return servers that Dell built for you.
Nope. Yeah, I used to way over architect things, right? Because it was so expensive to buy things, have somebody put, it took so much time and money, you might as well just go huge because Yep. And that would, with cloud now, you scale up, scale down, you pay for, if you're doing a Lambda or an Azure function, you're paying for a very thin execution slice of time versus
Fractions of a percent.
Yep. So
Wonderful.
Yep. So you can be more efficient. That's the good side. The bad side is a developer can go out and spin up this whole ML environment, rack up a $30,000 bill before they know it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you half a dozen stories where a CIO's done that, where, they walk into
Database size in Azure being $600 something a month.
Yep. They forget to shut down the service and it runs over the weekend.
You have repositories, so you have source control.
Mm-hmm.
You can see what happened, what it used to be, what it is, whatever.
Yep.
Actually, Azure worked with me on that. You got it. They would give us credits. Remove it from storage receivers.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to more than one person who, they can go click through and do this, set something up and run it in the cloud, but is it going to be cost optimized? What they don't know is they don't know. They're just playing around. And so then we have to go to the cloud vendor on their behalf and say, hey, this person just spun this up. Can we, $30,000, can we somehow get that back, et cetera, et cetera. So. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But you do have the ability to set a cap. You can set a spending cap on your, and if you don't, it's kind of on you.
Yep. So, yeah.
You can't even set up the account without setting up a spending cap.
Yeah, I put alerts on mine. I put like a $1 alert on all my developer accounts because I've run it before and I was like, oh, that was kind of expensive. Like $1 is not a big deal, but
The cost balance, the equipment or what?
yeah.
You're gonna pay for it no matter what.
Yeah. All right. So some of the principles of FinOps, so again, purchasing decisions are now made by developers and by people building, cloud architects, cloud engineers, developers. If you're doing something out there, it has a financial impact on your environment. So teams need to collaborate, right? You can't, maybe before a CFO would, or the finance team would never really talk to a developer because they had CapEx. As long as they just used what was there, it didn't really matter, what they were doing because it was a sunk cost. So yeah, we've got to collaborate more. And decisions are typically, they're driven by business value of the cloud. So it's not all necessarily about cutting costs, but it's about what's really getting us value in the cloud and what are we doing with this particular IT infrastructure component. And everybody takes ownership for their cloud usage, right? Because now it's traceable, you've got tagging, who spun up this environment? Oh, it looks like so-and-so created these resources and didn't shut them down. So now there's accountability too, right? I mean, that's kind of scary sometimes. So, sometimes we'll have those issues and then companies will go, okay, we can't have developer costs spinning out of control. Help build us some controlled environments that are going to have some boundaries on them so we don't run into this situation. So then the cool thing is the developer doesn't have that pressure so much to constantly be micromanaging spend and they can innovate. So then that centralized team drives that FinOps, right? You've got tech, finance, operational teams kind of all working together and they can take advantage of that variable cost, right? So if I'm not using it, shut it down. Do I need to have this giant instance running? No, I don't need that. I can shut it down. I can scale it, et cetera, or use, a more modern, serverless type approach. So some things you kind of have to be able to do, right? You need to understand cloud usage and cost. The cool thing is, even an MBA can handle something like that, So I really try to encourage people with a finance background who like tech, get into FinOps. Like our company has a whole dedicated FinOps team. That's all they do is look at people's environments. Got to have performance tracking, benchmarking, make decisions in real time. The cloud rate optimization isn't just like how much you're using. It's often like what types of instances you're using and assigning. Are you aware of new features coming out? And then of course, usage optimization too. So, and organizational alignment, right? So if you're going to have product people doing product development and innovation and ideas, they probably need to be tied to the engineering team. So everybody's working on the same thing and making the same decisions. Do we put, time, money, and operational cost into AI ML feature that we're building, or we do this bug fix over here? All those kind of things. So I'm going to kind of run through this. Crawl, walk, run is a good analogy for how to get started. 101. There is so much. I talk to companies all the time who've done nothing in terms of optimization. A lot of times companies will build a product. A developer will just spin up an account and run it. They build this really cool feature. They figure out how to sell it. It makes money. It's horribly unoptimized from a FinOps perspective, but it makes money and it works great and everybody loves it. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Well, that works great for a while until, maybe you want to scale it or hyperscale it more, or maybe there's a certain type of feature that you want to add that makes things more difficult. So, there's a lot you can do just to crawl. And even if you just crawl, It's kind of like the curve, right? That first 20% of effort can get you a lot. And just being aware of your costs can get you a lot. And then you can walk and you can run. There's AI tools to help you get really smart. You don't really have to get that sophisticated. And it's iterative, right? You know, you're not going to start day one having things perfect. So, well, there you go. All right. So I like to say, think like an investor, right? You've got your time and effort, energy, and your company's operational expense. How are you going to invest that in what you're building? And my favorite saying, one of my favorite saying, every engineering decision now in the cloud is a purchasing decision. Because I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that. So you as the engineer in the cloud, you're now a finance purchaser of IT services. The cloud vendor is doing X, Y, Z for you. And think of it as an infinite game. I love the book by Sinek. Any Sinek fans? Simon Sinek? I'm a Simon Sinek fan. Check out The Infinite Game. It's a good book. But it talks about, you know, oftentimes we think about win-lose in our culture, and that's more about ahead and behind, right? There's never perfectly financially optimized. And it's not just cost, it's also where am I spending money that gets the biggest ROI? Because if you knew you could spend $1 million and make $1 billion, you'd spend as many $1 million as you could, right? So sometimes it's about investing and seeing what you're getting returns on. So be self-aware is kind of one of those, you know your limitations, know what you know and don't know. And there's a lot of non-technical options as well in what you're doing out there with the cloud vendors. It's amazing. I talk to people, I'm like, no, we don't have to touch your infrastructure. We're just going to come in here and optimize the way you purchase your cloud services. And so there's different contracts you can line up. There's things, you know, everybody's heard of reserved instances on AWS. That's usually a low-hanging fruit, savings plans, enterprise discount plans. You know, when your spend gets really high, there are certain things you can do with the cloud vendors when you're spending $1,000 a month with them. There's a lot more you can push on them when you're spending $1 million a month. And there's a lot of people spending that much money out there on cloud services. So, and leverage tools. There's so many tools out there that can look at your environment and give you advice. AI is helping a lot in that. But even just having cost reporting tools that track what you're doing and some of the built-in tools. I take my AWS, Azure, or GCP off for a minute. And there's actually a lot of good third-party tools that are better than the cloud vendor tools. Look at those, you know. Let's see. We use one called Anodot. And what it does is it aggregates everyone's cloud all together. And so I can track your Anodot, ANODOT. So that's what we use. Yeah, a little bit. So it's but we use tools like that, and there's more. I probably should have had a list here, but there's more tools that, you know, help you aggregate, spend, track. Some of them cost a lot, some of them cost nothing. There's a guy in Chicago who's got a startup with one. There's a guy in Columbus who's got one. So use tools, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Okay, this is the Werner Vogel's slide, the frugal architect. Anybody seen this before? No. Okay. So here's kind of as we design systems and architect systems, and Jason probably knows this better than I do. So Werner is the AWS CTO, top tech guy. Law one, make cost a non-functional requirement. Right. So what's the, you know, that's not something a lot of developers are used to hearing. How much is that solution going to cost? Because we don't purchase it. We've already purchased the infrastructure. We don't know. We just put more code out there. It'll run it. So number two is systems that last align cost to business, right? So is what I'm spending money on valuable, right? If it's not valuable to the business, then it doesn't end up lasting. And sometimes that's okay, right? It just has to last for a year. Architecting is a series of trade-offs. Yep. Oh yeah. And then it's 10 years later.
Yeah.
So architecting is a series of trade-offs, right? Like what's best and what's worse? Well, I don't know. Again, if I could spend $1 million and make $1 billion, that sounds like a really good architecture decision. But, you know, versus if I could only spend $500,000 and I only make $500,000, right? What's the better decision? Cost isn't always what's relevant. It's more about the business value. Unobserved systems lead to unknown costs, right? Like if you never look at your credit card bill and see how many subscriptions to Netflix and Disney Prime or Amazon Prime and Disney you have, you're probably going to wake up one day and be like, holy cow, I've got 80 subscriptions. What do my kids buy? You know? So that's good. Cost aware architectures implement cost controls, right? So you've got alerts, you're watching things, you've got a good tagging structure in there that's kind of like letting you see what's going on. And it's cost optimization is incremental. It's not a win-lose. You won that you arrived and you can back off. It's more like let's get a little better. And then one day you kind of wake up and you're like, oh, you know what? We could do that, but the effort is so high, the return is so small, we're just not gonna. It's good enough for now. So and then unchallenged success leads to assumptions. So I see this manifest itself with folks who build something out and the software does really well. And they're like, just leave it alone. And no one ever thinks to even look at it. And lo and behold, if somebody had just looked at it, they could have saved a couple $100,000 a month, right? Well, if you're a managing director of that software product and you're going to make $100,000 more a month, you want to make that change, right? Because that's money in your pocket. So I run into that all the time, you know, and because people just, you know, it works. Don't worry. We don't need to look at it. Everything's good here. There's a lot of times getting some fresh eyes helps them. So here's what I'd say. Day one, this is, you know, day one is an Amazon kind of philosophy. But, you know, let's say you're like, help, nobody here thinks FinOps, but I want to start, right? Like how would I do this day one? Number one, get access to your billing report.
Well,
Like so many people just nobody even looks at it except for the person who pays the bill. And especially if it's new, they have no idea. You're not talking, right? Remember we talk silos. So just get access to that. Most of the times I found people are really willing to share that. There's not like anything secret there. It might be. Yep. And you know, sometimes people are using their personal credit cards to get points on, you know, I mean, that happens. So here, you know, so but that's, you know, that's step one, right? You don't know what you can do until you know what you're spending and you know what the financials are. But let's say you're in an organization that, yes, ma'am. Good point. Okay. I'm not sure I missed the first question or so the way that we do, so that's a really good question. So if you're going to introduce financial cost as a requirement in your solution. So for instance, what we do is before we build anything, each of the cloud vendors have calculators. You can go out there. So you come up with your architecture and then you go build that in that cost calculator. And then you can extrapolate that, you know, to the scale you think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we do. Now, sometimes that estimate is way off, but at least you have an order of magnitude. And it's never, I don't know. I will say, I have never had it be dead on, but usually it's, you know, it's close. Right. So I know there's a difference between if I'm going to spend $10,000 a month once the system's ramped up and it's like $50, right? That's a huge difference. So
if I could add something to that. Never be afraid to tell your customer how much you think something's gonna cost. The worst thing that could happen is you don't tell them. And then they're surprised by the bill. They scrap the whole project, going, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because they didn't go and ask their powers to be or budget to pay for the hosting or what have you. And so, you know, it's not, I mean, I'm guessing it's not your job to approve the payment. It's your job to be transparent and honest. And then let them go and figure out, you know, the business, you know, the FinOps piece of it. But you can't do your work unless they approve it.
Yeah. We try to project it with an estimate ahead of time. And then usually I'll do like a 3-year run rate. So I'm telling you, we do this all the time. Build a, you know, especially with scalable infrastructure, some of it is shared, right, and won't scale. And then you've got certain infrastructure that's going to ramp up and down with usage. So we'll go, okay, we expect this, you know, I work a lot with SaaS platforms and ISVs. We're going to, if we add this feature, here's the base blueprint for this. If we roll this out to all these tenants, it's going to be this much, but we think our subscriber growth is going to be this. And so we project that out, and then, you know, and then of course, once it's implemented, we are still tracking it, right? We're watching those expenses. You know, and so, yeah, we don't, I mean, there's really, what else can you do? You know, there's no magic mirror, and sometimes you implement it differently than the way you planned. So sometimes scalability works differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, so here's what I do. It's so get that billing report, things you can do without going to like getting promoted to CIO, re-architecting the entire organization so that FinOps works. You got finance, business, product, engineering all working together, right? That's really difficult. Because a lot of people work in these environments, right? So you get that bill, I always, you know, optimize all those line items, biggest to smallest, and start from that top one and work down. A lot of times it's like in the case of AWS or Azure, it's EC2 or VM runtime. It's just that. What can I do to minimize that? Start with that big bill and work down. Get some quick wins, optimizing those instance types. You know, you don't need the large, you don't need the extra large. You need a fleet of small, and then you need to shut them down every day. Yep.
That graph, they use
Yep.
that graph.
And there's even tools out there that help you pick those. Some of the cloud vendors haven't built in. Again, I think there's probably better tools out there. Retention policies on log files. That's a big one, right? A developer just sets it up. It's in development mode. They have a shared account with log files and, you know, an S3 bucket or an Azure file share, and everything just goes out there. And then the next thing you know, in 2 years later, you've got 2 terabytes of logs. I don't know. That might be ridiculous, but you know, that's crazy. And then tagging helps you really get granular on expenses. So in the cloud, you know, if you know this feature, this product feature, this bug, this client, you know, whatever your metadata is, will really help you track costs. Oh yeah. And the AWS Instance Optimizer, you know, there's tools to help you do some of that. Things to do to start organizational change, right? Okay, I know we need to change because you know, product teams never talk to me, and I'm building this, and I don't talk to the finance people, right? You've got organizational silos. Ask about costs during requirements. So to your point, great question. Hey, if this runs, like what should my run rate be? What's my cost per user metric that I should be shooting for, right? People may not have ever thought about that.
Yeah. Cost per user, what?
Yep. Yeah. Cost per new tenant, per, you know, per sign-on client, stand-up time, using that cost calculator to predict those costs. Yes, Steve?
When you say ask about
You know, if I'm an engineer, I'm asking whoever's giving me those requirements, what the cost requirements are.
Are you need licenses or even enterprise?
I mean, it probably depends on your solution.
You probably want building out. But even whether it's an internal, like, or product-based company or external, your consulting firm, you should outline the entire cost structure. So
Yep.
here's for the development costs, here's all the licenses we'll probably need.
Including Visual Studio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, I mean, if that's something that you're gonna have to acquire in order to do the work, that is a cost.
Yes.
Visual Studio is $1,000.
I was thinking that you're doing this, they need that for yourself to do what you're doing for that company.
Yeah, but if you make more than $1 million,
I like what you
you can't use community.
Okay.
You have to have a license. Now, will Microsoft do anything? Probably not. But there's that. There's all the licenses that you might need, like fonts, libraries that you might need. Let's say you use ReSharper. Let's say you use Copilot. All of those are costs.
Yeah, they can cover that.
But all of those are costs that come out of the total program costs. Then you have, what are the recurring costs? Like when this thing is done, what will it cost to continue to host it? What are those costs? So
Yep.
we're gonna need for our development instance, at least one web server and a database server and like functional. But in production, we'll start small. We'll start like an S1, not big,
It's something you can write off your term.
Well, write-off is not something people talk about when you're a multi-million-dollar company.
Okay.
That's little things.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a whole team that would know all this stuff. So what you wanna end up doing is going, okay, it's gonna be, not only am I gonna have an S1, I might need to ramp up immediately on day one. Okay, well, then I'm gonna need to go to multiple like S3 instances. Well, then in my budget for when we go live, I'm gonna say we need $50,000 a month. It may only be $2,000. But the worst thing I could do is say it's gonna be $2,000 a month. And then I need another $48,000. And we cleared the budget 6 months ago.
Yeah.
With the powers
They
that
wrote
be,
you the
and they're like,
check.
nope.
Yeah. Yeah. So for instance, you stand up a new solution and AI and ML are huge right now and have been for a year. So what I see happening a lot right now in the market is everybody went out and spun all this stuff up and they didn't really understand how to optimize it right. They probably purchased the LLM that was just overkill for what they needed to do, spent too much. And all of a sudden, yeah. So, and then somebody in finance gets their Azure bill or their AWS bill. They're like, what is this line item here? Why is it so big? It may be a good thing. You're like, well, it's 50 grand because people like our product so much. We had triple the subscriber growth this year. And then, and then they're loving that number, right? Because they're
translates to something.
right. Because we've at the front of this, we've said it's going to be this. Here's your return, right? The
Yeah.
product manager, your product manager, the person who owns that platform, they're going to be looking at the financials all the time.
Yeah.
Should be.
And the people that make those decisions often are not technical. That
Yep.
will approve those budgets. So you have to clarify why we need this money. But if you don't do it in the beginning, it's a nightmare to go ask for more money. And if you save money, they'll like you. Like, hey, I saved this bunch of money. Whatever. There's all this money left over for your promotion or bonus.
Yep. Yeah.
You
You.
back to 48,000 that you want to.
Hell no, I keep it in my budget. I transfer that into another budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hopefully they've already planned, right? Because they're planning operational expense, right? They're thinking, oh, well,
They'll take it out of my budget.
Yep.
Put it in somebody else's.
but if you've tied business value to spend, that's basically, to your engineering decisions are tied to purchasing decisions, which are tied to business value, then it's going to be really easy to have that conversation about, hey, yeah, I know the bill spiked by 40%, but that's because our revenue went up 90%.
Yeah.
And they love that.
They
So,
understand.
yep.
It's very much in perception and understanding.
Yep. And on the flip side, right? Oops, I spun up this environment.
Yeah.
It has no business value. I was just playing around with something, or we were just experimenting with AI.
Yeah.
And we left the whole fleet of, instances running over the holiday break, Christmas to New Year's. And all of a sudden there's, this ginormous bill and somebody's got to pay it, or we got to go beg to not have to pay it.
I think Docker lowered our costs.
Yeah. Yep. So now a little more advanced topics, cloud unit economics. And I think we talked about this a little bit. How do you maximize your profit based on some metrics that you can track in your system is kind of how I think of that. So for instance, I think I have a slide here on different, I think I have one coming up. Yeah, here's one. What are some metrics, right? Like anybody familiar with investing, you've got like different ratios, you know, that all these different numbers you track to see how profitable a certain investment might be. Well, you do the same thing here with cloud-based, you know, platforms for FinOps. Okay, you could do the same thing on IT infrastructure too. I would think. It's probably a lot more difficult. But so you tag everything, you've got these great reports, and now I know what really drives profitability in my system are two things. Maybe it's how fast can I get somebody subscribed to my software? How much does it cost to get them set up? Which is, you know, what's the customer acquisition cost? And then two, well, that's a sales metric, but how much does it cost to get a new person set up, a new tenant set up, new account running? And then how much does it cost per subscriber, per user of my system? Maybe those are two common metrics. So those are still fairly high level, but I'm amazed at how difficult it is, especially if maybe you've got an application, you know, that you've had for 15 years. It's really profitable, and you're probably not ever going to completely redo it in the near term because it's just too expensive and too risky. So maybe the best you can do is just, it's about this much per user. Well, maybe that's good enough. But what you're doing is you're tracking that number and you're seeing as we scale more subscribers, is that cost metric going down? Is it linear or is it you know, is it exponential? Like maybe it's increasing. So tracking those kind of metrics are typically what people try to do with like a big SaaS platform. You know, so you think of like Netflix, right? Like a giant, enormous system. Like how can we drive down the cost per subscriber so that $15 a month gets us the most profit? You know, a couple pennies would make a huge deal. So they're looking at those things. And so, you know, there's kind of a journey, right? You have no cost models, right? It's just, I don't know, we pay our bill every month and we kind of hope it works out and, oh, it looks good, right? And then you've got unit costs, right? You're crawling, right? You're doing something. So maybe I've got a blended cost in your invoice. I know I'm spending X dollars on this cloud provider per month, and I know I have 452 subscribers, X over Y. I've got a metric, right? That's a little better. You're doing something, you're tracking it. Then maybe we start getting this unit costs into, sorry, we start getting unit costs into there. So maybe we've gone through and tagged different features. And I'm always thinking in terms of SaaS platforms or, you know, software products. So maybe I know people subscribe, you know, if you know, a lot of people use Salesforce, right? But you don't just buy Salesforce, you buy a gazillion different features. Well, I no doubt they're tracking every little feature that's used and how much revenue it drives, and they've got it pretty drilled down. They know what's most profitable. And so they've got unit cost integration. And then of course you're running. Okay. Now, you know how much it costs to say you've got a big electronic health system, you know, EMR, electronic medical record system. How much does it cost to serve up one chart? How much does it cost to serve up one page of content? How much does it cost, you know, and how does that change over time? So probably some of your big vendors do that, but you'd be amazed at how many people just get by fairly far on the early side of the spectrum. But at least they're doing something. Okay, so excuse me. So here's some examples. Cloud unit economics. So let's say you've got a financial SaaS company. Maybe you've got like a trust management, financial software, stock picker analyzer, something like that. So maybe your metric is how much does it cost to analyze one financial transaction? Maybe you're in a government, right? You've got a government software, you know, you need to serve a certain number of people. You want to drive down how much it costs to serve one particular client. Let's say you've got a hotel, right? How much does it cost if I'm Marriott? How much does it cost for me to make one reservation? What's that IT cost? And then maybe you're like a video, you know, Zoom or Teams or somebody like that. How much does it cost while an active user is using my platform, right? Because then you've got the free tier versus paid versus, you know, if somebody's on Zoom 24/7, what's that cost? So, you know, and then you can see who the problem customers are, right? Like, oh, yeah, why are they using so much? You know, what's going on there? Any SaaS, you know, you've heard the concept noisy neighbors. Sometimes cost is a good way to pick that up. So yeah, so that's kind of my talk. I highly recommend Cloud FinOps book by O'Reilly. I think I don't want to speak for everybody in the FinOps world, but it's probably like the best book out there. It's the one I hear recommended the most. It's the one I recommend my students buy for that particular week. And it goes a lot deeper than what I just did. So anyway, there you go. Any questions, Steve? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Because you
I'm
pick,
kind of dealing with the little bit in like ITF and TBM.
IT financial management.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, same thing, right? Because you can, like, if somebody allows me to go create a new account, now I'm incurring spend for my organization. And if I don't have a plan for that, and it's not tied to something that they find valuable, then that might create a problem. So maybe not. See you. I used to have to, when I worked for one of the healthcare hospital groups in the area, anytime I built a new system, I had to go spec out, you know, a piece of hardware. Then I had to have them go approve it, or I had to apply to have a shared resource, or I had to, you know, basically it was a purchasing request. So. Yep. You kind of have, I mean, usually we build those ourselves.
Insights, figure out the amount of time the user was on each of your resources. Can it break it down?
I don't know that service that well. Yeah, there's a lot of services.
And you can look at how much time they used on a web service or on an application service.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can tell how many like database transactions they did in like 5 minutes, you know, an average user. I know there's a bunch of things that you can
Probably
check.
chance are using Cosmos.
Probably class revenue.
Which one?
Number of base accesses.
The cost of access.
Users. You can average out that one.
Yeah, you can track number of API calls. So it just depends I guess it depends what your API is. Sometimes with those, you know, with a traditional application where, you know, you've got like some .NET code,
Yeah.
you know, thrown out there to an IIS server, and then you've got SQL and it's contacting it directly, you know, those kind of bare metal type solutions might be a little harder to get that granular cost metric on, but.
You should be really smart about how you use cloud service.
Mhm.
If it's something that you don't really care about the availability of data, so using a huge cloud service provider might be a mistake. Yeah, like let's say there's huge files that you need to occasionally download, but it doesn't really matter if they're available or not. Well, you might as well go find something that's like, you know, $100 a year that gives you unlimited, you know, storage or whatever with unlimited quote unquote bandwidth for those larger files, because you won't have the capacity on like an Azure or like S3 or whatever, because it'll cost you $5,000 a month to service.
Yeah, we have plenty of customers still. They bought a data center 10 years ago. It's all paid for. It's a CapEx. They're just burning it down. And you're like, well, you know, the application that they need to build just needs to support their folks. So that why would they build in the cloud?
S3 stats.
Okay.
S3stats.com. And what they'll do is they'll monitor your AWS S3 logs. They'll tell you all the files that are getting downloaded, how many times, how much it costs you per file. And
Yeah.
it'll give you in the report the most expensive files. And I monitored that on a weekly basis. Because if there was a spike,
Yeah.
I could tell that, well, we released an update and everybody's grabbing it. But if I didn't see a spike after releasing an update, I'd wonder if something was wrong.
Mhm.
So if my cost went from like $20 a week to like $40 a week, I was like, oh, yeah, whatever. I mean, who cares about $20? But if it stayed flat, I'd be really concerned, like, okay, or do we have a communications issue?
Is there a bug?
Or is the wrong URL in there, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because customers won't tell you, they'll just complain. They'll complain somewhere, like give you a poor rating.
I have
Yeah.
customers now who have, they produce a lot of content. And with AI and Gen AI being such a huge thing now, they have bad actors. They want their content searchable, but now they have bad actors going and basically proxying their content.
Yeah.
And surfacing it as their own. Yep. And then, you know, they're consuming it in their language models and they're doing their own thing with it. And so they're trying to figure out how to prevent that because it drives their cost too.
Now you gotta go and review his data. I'm curious how much you can undo in LLM.
Well, that's,
Like throw away the learning for the past week because we found something bad.
yeah,
Depending on where you're going with it. We store it as just a C database.
Yeah.
It's used for like a month and then we rotate out.
Yeah.
Because we're still so infantile. And we don't need a big long-term learn.
Yeah.
We can, so,
I
you know,
know,
kind of flushing in, that's what we serve.
you know, she was before, I think, froze its data like a year ago. So it's already well behind and people still use it.
it poses a regulatory question, right? Because if you have a relational database and someone goes, hey, this data is compromised, you got, you know, delete star from people where ID equals 1, right? Well, if you've got, now it's incorporated into this language model, how do you hit the blow it away and rebuild it? Well, that's a huge operation for one row. So,
Let's also, how do you get any of that data back? If you understand how AI works.
Yeah.
You know, in machine learning, all those repetitions, you know, do you like sucking out of your brain everything that you learned?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a cool product called Skyflow that is like a lockbox, and basically it can point at the data source and then it basically anonymizes it. Can I use that word? For you, so you don't have to like worry so much about what it's doing. Now, it doesn't, of course, certify you from a compliance perspective, but it does a lot. It uses AI to figure out, okay, this is supposed to be anonymous healthcare data, right?
Mhm.
Because like often that's what needs to get shared, but we don't need your name, social number, address, all that. We need
Right.
anonymized data. Well, they'll do that kind of abstracted for you. So,
Then there's also personally people poisoning your data set.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like, the other direction, users purposely putting in data that would ruin the trading set.
Hmm.
Like, I can't remember what tool in my team released that artists can run their image through. And it will basically poison the image for any generative AI model.
Yeah.
Huh.
Or you get
Really?
bias in there and you have to back it out. So that's all I have. So, any other questions or?
Be aware of tools that are available.
Yeah.
Continuous.
Yeah. It's all usually CIOs that decide to play around with AI ML. And then they go spin up a whole fleet of, you know, like a whole fleet of instances and leave it on over the weekend. I'm not kidding. I mean, I know several companies and they're really honest about it, but you know, those kind of things.
We just keep running. And license.
you know,
They'll apply, or they'll sit, or they'll go through these tutorials or whatever that are out in the labs and all that type of stuff. And they'll spin up things and they'll just be messing around and they'll turn on. We had somebody even before we could block it as soon as we found the first person trying to do it. But they tried to do Fabric. They tried to do like an F64 just because something in the white paper said that all the feature set was enabled in F64 and they were like, oh, okay, well, let me try and do this.
isn't that like an insane level?
Yeah, it's like 64, like transactional unit, like sprawled out to like 64 cores type
Yeah,
thing.
but it's like $100,000 a month or something.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you keep it a fraction of that.
Create the flood Chicago.
So it's like, yeah, so it's like, so what we just told them was we locked that out. We contacted the person who did it, made sure that they had something in their MSDN to keep going on whatever they were working on.
Yeah.
Shut that down, contacted Microsoft, told them that we had a problem, you know, what's this happening, and just getting ahead of it. And then put in policy.
Yep.
To make sure that we couldn't
Yeah.
do those capacities.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where Microsoft was rolling out, like any cloud vendor,
Yeah.
rolling out new features.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you've only got so much policy, and there's not, Microsoft especially doesn't make it real easy to say an exempt policy, like you can't bring this tech in
Right.
until I approved it, right? So you end up having, oh, discovery. So yeah, you just gotta watch it. But we have like the purchasing type thing where you go through MSDN, then you can request the sandbox. Where
Yep.
multiple developers can work on it, and it's a subscription. Where you've got like a spending limit and all that type of stuff set up. And then once you get past that, you go to our architecture review board, they check out your diagrams, all that type of stuff. Then they get a project sponsor, and that's what we go through. We do based on what you've done so far in cost, plus what the cost estimators are saying.
Mhm.
And we build up what we think it'd be for that run rate and push you in.
So you go a subscription per kind of like proof of concept.
Mhm.
And you give that a spending limit.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, you know, if you have an MSDN subscription, you get like a free 150,
150
Azure credits a month, right?
Especially.
which is great. You know, so I just could use that and set max spending to 150.
Yep.
Otherwise, I gotta call someone.
Ours is similar. We allow a burst of 120%. So we'll start notifying at 80, start telling them, hey, you're getting close to your budget.
Yeah.
100, 110, ooh, you're getting close, buddy. And then 120, we go through a 24-hour shutdown.
Yeah.
So they still have 24 hours to notify their project sponsor if they need to get more release on it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just kind of one of those trial by error and figure out what works and what the business wants.
That's good. That's a good policy. I like that.
That's,
All of it's automated. right?
yep, yeah.
Every bit of stuff you can do with policy or with cost budgets. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we spin up a subscription. It's pretty slick. It's a vending machine model.
Oh,
You
cool.
go in and you request the service now, they have like do this and
That's cool.
spits out this subscription rate. As long as it goes through an approval chain, it gets serviced.
Yeah. Cool.
It must be something I'm thinking about, though. It's my manager who's thinking about that and provide any whatever I need.
Yeah. Until you select the F-64 instead of, you know.
I want to be in a different position where I'm.
Right.
Yeah. I'd like that too.
But that's, I mean, it's common. Most organizations, they don't fix anything till there's a problem. So, you know, they'll go, yeah, just go spin up an account and build a proof of concept of this. And they go do that. They did exactly what they're asked to do. But they're new to it, you know, or they spin it up and they don't know how much it's going to cost. And maybe they've never been asked to, hey, go ahead and give me a run rate before we, you know, give me an architecture diagram. Yeah.
Let's just throw some more memory at it.
We're gonna start locally first.
Yep. So-
Azure storage emulator is free.
Another cool thing that we do when we get to production, that so Sandbox is freeform and we don't usually, if the person knows something like Terraform or Ansible or Bicep or any of that,
Yeah.
file formation or any of that type of stuff, then we will take whatever they build for their templates, but we just let them play in that environment with a spending limit. And then when they get to an SDLC where they've got a dev QA, whatever, they start provisioning environment.
Yep.
At that point, we use Terraform, so we start putting Terraform in and INC, and then nobody has access to prod.
Yeah.
Prod is all free, everything's done with automation, so.
Yep.
It's just, you kind of know what your costs are gonna be from that perspective, just because it's all automated and all reviewed through that.
Yep.
So that helps tremendously, because prod's where you can run into just crazy down.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not watching.
Yeah. Ship it.
Yeah. Make it so. Yeah. Yeah, many times we've had customers, especially if they've got large platforms and a lot of development teams across like the globe. And they want to control that development environment. They'll be like, just here's a development environment request and they can stand it up, but it's only has the features they need to build this product with the general architecture. So they'll turn off all the things that, yep. Yep. And most of the time that's spawned by somebody spun something up and it got out of control and, you know.
I had that happen. I was like, huh. In 1 month, I noticed our bill. It's higher, but okay. And like the next month, it was still high. I'm like, I finally looked at it. I'm like, what is this? And some database, that was the thing I was bringing up before, got, I guess, deployed on Azure or some site spun up and maybe the database was missing. By default, it uses like their vCore.
Oh, so it just,
whatever. It's like, you know, some crazy dollar amount per month, like absolutely unnecessary as a default. And there's no way to set what the default is that I can find. So I had to call Microsoft. I'm like, hey, can we get a credit for this? They gave us like 2 out of 3 months.
Yeah.
They gave us some credit. I'm like, I didn't even know. Like,
I was surprised because at first when I first started working at the cloud, like in that department in this company, I was like, everybody was afraid to contact Microsoft. I was like, are you kidding me?
what? You see the people to reach to.
The amount of money we spend with these people each month, like contact them, tell them that like $10,000 scares somebody, right? They're like, oh, I gotta ask for $10,000 credit. We spent $160,000 last month or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not.
It's okay. They'll get back to you.
Yeah.
They'll skin off their back.
We didn't, same thing, they didn't, they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, we got you on that.
Yep.
So I mean, you know, older usually.
Oh, now they have chat.
Intentionally test things and stuff like that, but
Now they have a chat feature on Azure.
yeah.
Oh, it's so much nicer because you used to have to like send email. Now they force you to chat first.
Yeah,
I'm like, thank you,
Yeah.
because that's all I needed.
yeah.
Cool. All right.
Well, thanks, David.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. thanks all. And the other thing I've seen is startups, they get a bunch of credits.
Let me stop the meeting.
They get a bunch of credits. And then they don't really care, not paying attention to how much they spend. It's not added.
Thanks all. Please come next month. We meet on the first Wednesday of every month. Except of course, you know, the July 4th week, we'll meet the following week. Thank you and see you next month.
Yeah.